So when is the right time to make a change? Do we do it before Penn State or after Penn State? I'll explain coming up next.
You are Locked On Trojans, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Fight on, everyone. I'm your host, Mark Culkin, and thank you. Thank you for making Locked On USC part of the Locked On Network your first listen every day, whether you're watching the show on YouTube, wherever you're going to download it. This podcast is always free. This podcast always appreciates your support. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you're going to get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So USC is trying to keep its wild card playoff hopes alive. And I'll say it, the balance of USC season literally hangs on what happens this Saturday. It's going to make a difference. They're either going to build off the momentum. They're going to be either 4-2 or 3-3. That's the obvious. The defense has made such a huge turnaround that it's really hard for me to really point the finger at them for a handful of plays that they've given up this season. They stand out because USC has the opportunity to win the game, and negative things are happening at inopportune times. But I don't believe the fault, the way USC is losing these games, really, I don't think you can lean so much to the defense side of the ball as much as to the opposite side of the ball. Look, they're holding teams at 24 points or less. I mean, let's just be honest here. Michigan had that pick six, so they didn't really give up. The defense did not give up 27 points. And Minnesota, they got 24 points, but they were gifted that touchdown at the end of the game. I'm still agitated about that. Every time I go to social media, there it is. Ball did not cross the plane. Sorry. And USC recovered the fumble. Moving forward. So here's my conundrum. Making wholesale changes on offense. Again, I'm not talking about the defense right now. And here's the thing. Once you go all in at this juncture, you're at the halfway point. You're either going to be 4-2 or 3-3. And that might make the decision. Whatever decision you make, you've got to be committed. You can't go back and forth. Just got to ride the wave. Against Minnesota, USC had 66 offensive snaps. Miller Moss, quarterback, offensive line, they played all 66 snaps. No rotation whatsoever. That's all right. I've asked for that. I said you gotta see what you have when you go with everything. Rotating Alani Noah and Amos Kalolele at right guard, I don't think was really doing anything. Miller Moss has a lot on the line right now. He's already shown, right? We know what he's capable of doing when he gets just any type of time. Allow him to survey the field, and when he's not under duress, he's going to slice and dice you to death. He's shown that. Unfortunately, Miller has been under duress 30% of the time he drops back. That means 1 out of every 3 pass attempts, he is being pressured. He is under duress. He's in a hurry. He's not getting, the wide receivers aren't getting the chance to finish their routes. According to Pro Football Focus, Moss has been pressured 29.5% of his dropbacks this season. 62 pressures, 210 dropbacks. Again, I don't tend to understand Pro Football Focus's formula and how they come up with their stats. They say he was only pressured, 8 times by Minnesota? No. I disagree with that number. And, they said that Minnesota didn't blitz. Okay. But he was definitely pressured more than 8 times. So look, if USC's offensive line can't protect him 60% of the time, then Miller's not going to survive the year. It's not going to be his choice. So if USC is 3-3, and depending on how the offensive line plays, this is the key. I think it might be time for Coach Riley to kind of look down the road. Again, I'm talking if USC happens to lose on Saturday. So I don't think we need to make any changes at running back. I don't think you're not pulling Miller Moss before this game. But let's talk about two other position groups. So you got wide receiver. Let me give the snap counts. You had Kyron Hudson, 56 snaps. Jacoby Lane, 42 snaps. Makai Lemon, 35. Zachariah Branch, 31. Deuce, 30. Kyle Ford, 20. That was your wide receiver group. 6 guys. I mentioned it on yesterday's Locked On USC episode. I said, I think Makai Lemon needs more of a role. Well, there you have it. He had the third most snaps on Saturday. So, and again, my question isn't, I'm really trying to narrow this down. I'm just kind of walking you through this. No changes at quarterback. You're not changing the rotation at running back with Woody Marks, Quentin Joyner. Brian Jackson got 1 rep. So is it a time to make a decision with the offensive line? That's really where I want to go with this. I mentioned it a second ago. All 66 snaps on offense, same 5 guys. Elijah Page, Emmanuel Preyon, Jonah Monheim, Alani Noah in this game, and Mason Murphy. Rotating the right guard hasn't separated those guys. You're not really getting much of a difference between Noah and Talalele. With that said, Coach Riley feels that Noah had his strongest game of the year against Minnesota. I'm not going to disagree. I don't remember any really bad beats inside on the right side. I'm sure it happened. But is this USC's best option for the offensive line? Okay. Yesterday, I suggested on yesterday's episode, moving Jonah back to left tackle. You're asking him to be the most selfless person on the roster. We all know why he came back. Emmanuel Preyon, left guard. Killian O'Connor at center. Gino Quinones, right guard. More experience. And then Tobias Raymond at right tackle. You want to put Mason Murphy at right guard? Okay. Bigger size. He seems to be probably more geared to play right guard, even if he goes at the next level. So that gives you experience. And we already know what you're going to get with Jonah at left tackle. He showed what he's capable of doing last year. So let's say if you bench Mason Murphy now, you pretty much have to ride that wave going forward. If you're going to go with Gino Quinones or if you're going to go with one of the other younger guys. You can't take a veteran, bench him, and say, all right, well, we're going to start you again the following game. I don't think you can do that. Not at this point of the season. If you're 3-3 and you're looking towards the future, you gotta do what you gotta do. Or here's another suggestion. I think this is probably a viable solution for this game against Penn State. How about rolling out the tackle eligible for bunches, chunks of the game? 1 quarterback, 6 offensive linemen, 2 or 3 wide receivers and the running back, depending on, again, you go 2 wideouts, 1 running back. If Coach Riley is going to insist on throwing the ball on 3rd and short, then you know what? An extra pass protector is probably a good thing right now, right? And if you run it like you're supposed to, when you're picking up 6 to 7 yards per carry, like they were doing against Minnesota, then I like my chances there too with that 6 offensive linemen lining up. Again, you make them tackle eligible. This is USC's first playoff game of the year. Let's call it what it is. There's a difference. 3-3, if you win, you're 4-2, you advance. You play the next game. You try and get to 5-2. At this point, USC has no margin for error. Another loss, they're not making the playoffs. You get to 10-2 at the end of the year, you got a really good chance. You got that game against Notre Dame. That's the playoff game. That's the actual you're in game. You lose, it's bowl prep season, and you got to get the younger guys ready. That's what you do during bowl prep, right? Focus on the future. Get those younger guys as much practice time as possible. So again, when is the right time to make the changes? I think everyone would agree. Let's wait to see what happens with Penn State. But you got to make some changes with the personnel this week for Penn State. Penn State's got a really good defensive line, good edge guys. All right, as I mentioned, this is USC's first playoff game of the year. Coach Riley spoke on the Trojans Live radio show. I've got some of his quotes. We're going to talk about that in the next segment. All right, USC fans, it's time for the Roy Player of the Week. The Roy app lets you directly support your favorite athletes. And unlike collectives where you make a donation to a general fund, Roy lets you choose the specific athlete you want to support. You back the players you care about, and in return, you're going to get exclusive content. Like personal videos, updates, stuff only you're going to get if you're supporting that player using the Roy app. Now, and here's the best part. You're thinking, well, guys are, transferring midseason or they're redshirting midseason. Your donations are guaranteed. It's risk-free. If the athlete transfers or doesn't create the content, you get your money back. There's no risk. Here's my, this is my week's, I guess we'll call him the Roy Player of the Week Award. It's Woody Marks. He had over 130 rushing yards. He kept his consecutive game streak alive with at least one reception. Yeah, Woody. If you think Woody is deserving of NIL, go to Roy. I'm sure he would appreciate your donations. And plus, check this out. Roy is also doing their part to bring fans closer to their schools and athletes with an exciting giveaway. Roy is giving one lucky fan 2 tickets to any game of their choice in November. Here's how to enter. Just download Roy in the App Store or the Google Play. Use code LOCKEDON when signing up, and you're automatically entered. Already on Roy? Cool. Make a payment to any athlete's campaign, and you'll also be automatically entered. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Go to joinroy.com for the official rules. Download Roy and try it out. There's no subscription, no recurring fees, and for as little as $10, you can get in the NIL game. Roy, support the players, change the game. So let me read you this quote. You have to keep perspective. If you change 2 plays this year, then we're 5-0 and we feel like we're world beaters and we're worried about being overconfident. That's what Lincoln Riley said on the Trojans Live radio show Monday night. He also said this. I'd be a little surprised if there's another team in the country right now that's more battle-tested than we are. And so we've got to make that our advantage going forward. The teams that stay steady through it and persevere, on the back end of it could be a really good football team. And we have a chance to be one of those teams. Because we have a good football team right now, we have a good football team. We have a chance to be a very good football team if we handle these things correctly, end quote. Got a little bit of a word salad there from Coach there at the very end, but he was just trying to emphasize we have a good team. We just haven't played as well as we should. Excuse me. So Coach Riley is saying all the right things. I'd like him to kind of steer away from that we're 2 plays away stuff. I get it, but you're not. And he knows it. He's doing coach speak. It's positive spin. His point is simply this. If USC was 4-1, 5-0, he's absolutely correct. The narrative changes. I would definitely be on, let's make sure this team doesn't get overconfident. Because that's what he was actually saying. Hey, look, if we have those 2 plays back, now everybody's concerned about this team being overconfident going into the back half of the season. Penn State coming in, You've got 2 top 10 ranked teams. USC is no longer ranked. Penn State's number 4. I don't agree with their ranking, but it is what it is. So they are. They're coming into town. 5.5 point favorites, ranked number 4 in the country. And I said it in the first segment. This is USC's first playoff game of the year, and they have to perform like it. It's literally time for the team to execute on the field and prove their head coach correct. Prove that you're resilient and you're battle tested. Pro Football Focus said USC's run game graded out really well. The Trojans ran for 173 yards, 28 carries. Woody and Quentin Joyner and his handful of attempts, they were averaging 7.4 yards per attempt. USC also had 6 carries of 10 yards or more. And Riley said USC had another handful or more plays that were even close to breaking out for 10 yards or more. That's how dominant they were in the run game. So despite not using it enough, Coach Riley said he really liked what they did. Quote, we were really excited about what we did in the run game. Thought the guys played well, prepared hard. I thought Alani Noah had his best game as a Trojan, which was great to see. I thought Elijah took some really good steps. Mason was really good in the run game, end quote. They're very specific there. Let me be very specific right here. Yes, they were really good in the run game. In fact, USC should have had 200 yards on the ground easily. And PJ Fleck was willing to concede the ground game. I read you his quote. I'm going to read it again here in just 1 second. So again, for those of you who need to hear it again, who have untrained ears, PJ Fleck knew, he was counting on it, that Lincoln Riley would do what he does, what he schemes for best, and that's throwing the ball. Quote, they ran the ball pretty well. If they're going to beat us, they were going to have to beat us on the ground. You could just tell they were running the ball, but they still wanted to throw the ball. Let me put that into context. Let me drive that point home for some people to have the dots connected for them. Clock management is your friend when you have the lead and you're on the road. Okay? Since the dawn of time, even when you have quote unquote exciting, explosive offenses. When you have a 17-10 lead and you're on the plus side of the field and you're facing a 3rd down and 4, this is what you do. You don't throw the ball. You run the ball. And if you don't get the first down, you still trot out Michael Lance out there for a field goal attempt. Or let's say you go from 3rd and 4 to 4th and 1. Go big balls, Pete. Run it twice. Get that first down. PJ Fleck said it. They were running it well. They were getting what they wanted. Lincoln Riley said it. They could have got what they wanted. Coach Fleck, he gambled on Riley throwing the ball during crucial moments of the game because he has a history of doing that. He wants to put points on the board. So, again, I like the fact that Coach Riley recognized that they're running the ball well, but you got to lean into it. You got to do it, especially in crucial parts of the game. He also talked about Zachariah Branch on the show. Okay. Again, for those of you who think I'm being a little bit too critical of the sophomore, I'm not. This isn't personal. I'm a huge fan of Zachariah's. I wanted to be that dude from last year when he was a freshman All-American. But I can see it. I'm watching him struggle. You don't have to be a head coach at USC to recognize it. So, look, I had the latitude of offering public, constructive criticism. That's part of the gig. I go to practices. I'm in the press box. I'm watching the game. I'm interviewing the players, the coaches. I'm putting my face and name on it. I'm owning it. So tell you what, tell me what Coach Riley said that's different from what I've said since the season started. This is what Coach Riley had to say about Zachariah Branch. What's holding him back right now? Quote, I think he's trying really hard. He's practicing really hard. I do think he would probably admit he's probably guilty sometimes of maybe just pressing a little bit. But that's a little bit of the evolution from role player to a starter. End quote. That was Coach Riley's really nice way of saying that he's struggling with his confidence right now. What if I said anything different than what Coach Riley just said? I haven't. He hasn't. We've been saying the same thing. I've talked about how they keep trying to get Zachariah the ball and get him going. But even with the easy stuff, he's been struggling. Think about that easy touchdown drop against LSU, first game of the season. He could have walked in. And on Saturday against Minnesota, I know Miller missed him on that deep post pattern. But it's hard. Look, you're going to miss some throws. And I get it. It was a bad time for it to happen because Zachariah is struggling. As that game went along, Miller was struggling. But Miller's been nails all season long. So a misthrow happens. It just does. But early in the game on Saturday against Minnesota, Zachariah, he had that ball at the line of scrimmage that was knocked out of his hands. I kind of talked about that on yesterday's episode. He made it a little bit easier for the defense. You got to get off the line of scrimmage. When you stand there and then turn to wait for the ball, the defender has his ears pinned back. He's coming at you. He's going to hit you hard. Got to sell it a little bit. And then, I talked about that face mask drop that he had. Huge. That ended the drive. So far this year, Zachariah has 21 catches for 227 yards. 2 carries, 17 yards. And since he had that, 46-yard kickoff return against LSU where the kicker tackled him, 8 special teams returns for 32 yards. That's 4 yards per attempt. Kickoff and punt combined. No bueno. And again, he hasn't scored a touchdown in 12 games. That just boggles the mind. So I talked about the snap counts a little bit earlier. Keep an eye on his snap count. Coach Riley said they're going to keep giving him opportunities. That's not an ambiguous statement, but it is an interesting statement. They're going to continue to give him opportunities. How many? That's what we already saw. Mekhi Lemon got a handful of snaps more than he did this past week. Will that continue? In the next segment, I'm asking the question, who needs to break out? I've talked about breakout players for the season. Who needs to break out this Saturday when Penn State comes to town? Hey, NFL fans, have you started the season with a big return yet? You can do it with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you want to check out the stats and maybe catch some highlights. You know what? You can do that on FanDuel. Yeah, the same place you're placing your bets. Never used FanDuel before? Not a problem. Here's your chance. You're going to get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. All right. Who is going to be the breakout guy on Saturday? He might have already had a game like that this year. But who has to have a breakout game on Saturday against Penn State? Who do the Trojans need to give themselves a better chance of winning on Saturday? Well, I'm sure everybody's raising their hand going, Elijah Page, left tackle. Over here, Mason Murphy, right tackle. I know I raised opposite hands, but get the point. if USC's offense is going to have any type of success, the bookends, they've got to have a breakout game. It would do wonders for Elijah Page and Mason Murphy's confidence, because Penn State has a good pass rush. They've got good defensive ends. So definitely those two, without a doubt. I know this one sounds a little weird because he's already had many breakout games. He's already proven himself. But Miller Moss, he's got to be Superman. He's got to be able to bounce back from that game up in Minnesota. Terrible numbers. He's got to play more like he did against Wisconsin at the Coliseum. Guess where USC's playing on Saturday? In LA, Coliseum, hosting Penn State, which is good. Usually you're more confident when you're playing at home than on the road. You don't have to deal with the crowd, the noise factor. You're more familiar with your surroundings, obviously. Miller just needs to get back to looking sharp, being decisive, not miss those home run shots when they're available. Again, on that pass to Zachariah, it just needed to have a little bit more air under it, more towards the back of the end zone. Give Zachariah a chance to kind of run under it. It was too much on a line, not enough air. Again, he was under a little bit of pressure, but that's a throw that Miller needs to hit. So on offense, definitely those are the guys, and obviously Zachariah without a doubt. But you need your two offensive tackles and Miller Moss. If those guys are on Saturday, I like USC's chances. I know USC's defense is going to do their job. They've given up some plays. The defensive line didn't have the greatest game against Minnesota. But again, I'm not pointing the finger at the defense, not for any of these losses. I'm surprised USC's offense hasn't done more. Maybe I'm being unfair. Maybe I'm holding the offense in Lincoln Riley to a higher standard. Well, compared to what USC's been for the last couple of years, you're damn right I am. This is an anomaly. Lincoln Riley offense not producing. And I know, I get it. It starts up front with the offensive line. But the play calling has been curious. I'm talking about the lack of the running game being used when it needs to be. All right, I'm going to get off of that. So on the defense, though, somebody needs to be a playmaker. I will say that. Did Eric Gentry's absence on Saturday against Minnesota make a difference? Well, yeah. You can't recreate what he is, what he does. Would he have been able to make a couple of those key tackles? Probably. But that's been the issue with Eric Gentry. He can't stay on the field. He's injured. And this one, I don't know how serious it is, but we're talking shoulder, neck area. Hopefully it's nothing major. Hopefully he's available this week. And as far as the secondary, they've been solid, been really good. A couple of breakdowns, but we need an interception. And not one of those fluky bounce off the receiver, bounce off Jacoby Covington into Mason Cobb's hands type of interception. No. I want to see Kamari Ramsey or Achille Arnold or Jalen Smith or Jacoby Covington or whomever's on the field, Anthony Beavers, Zion Branch, Bryson Shaw. I can keep naming names. Go get the ball. Go ball hawk it. Make a play. Anticipate. And for God's sake, I need somebody on the defensive end, rush end. Give me a sack or two, please. That's what the defense has been missing. As a whole, as Kamari Ramsey said, they nut up. But individually, we're not seeing those spectacular plays, those make a play type of guys. That's what's missing right now from the defense. That's a nitpick. Because again, as a whole, they're playing great. That 4th and goal stop that they got robbed on, that's not the first time they've done that this year. Remember, they've done it against LSU. Those guys they know how to stop the run. When you're playing teams that run the ball like they like, teams like Minnesota and Michigan, yeah, they're going to break some. But when you're looking at the big picture, USC's run defense, stout, really good. All right, that's it. I'll be back with another episode tomorrow. That's what we do 5 times a week. Locked on USC, part of the Locked On Network. Oh, by the way, when you're done making this episode, your first listen every day, don't forget to head on over to wearelc.com. Got a lot of great content over there from Eric McKinney. Scott Schrader covers recruiting. I got my stuff. Got Chris Arledge with his musings. And there's a 50% off special. Use code FIGHTON. So till our next episode of Locked On USC, everyone, you know what to do.